So hi everyone, this is our first episode filmed in quarantine. I'm really happy that you're joining us here today with a very special guest and a friend of ours. Martha, please introduce her.
Sure. So today with us, we have Silba Staffler, who is a fellow LSE alumni. Since then, she went on to get a master's in behavioral science, and she's now a transformational coach with her own practice. So we thought, who better to bring along during these trying and unprecedented times than someone who's a true expert in the subject and can give us some tips and can discuss with us through quarantine.
Welcome, Silba.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Hi, guys. Very happy to be here. So thanks for being here today. It really means a lot to us. So I just wanted to kick off today's episode by talking a little bit about something that is in the forefront of everyone's mind, and this is how it is that we can maintain our identity in the midst of this global pandemic. So generally, we understand that identity is a social construct, and it pertains to the types of activities we want to take part in, the different memberships in our lives. And so it begs the question, how can we maintain our sense of identity when we're being physically deprived access to the very activities that define us?
What happens when all of these constructs go away? So as you said, identity is a social construct, but it is something that gives us a felt sense of solidity. It makes us feel like we are someone and we know who we are, and we seek to remain consistent to that identity. Mm-hmm. Now, when everything is stripped away all at once, all the labels, all the activities, all the experiences, all the interactions, there is the big question mark of who am I under all of that, and who am I without all of that?
Very good point. And I mean, for the first time ever, we have no one to spend time with but ourselves, really. And the single most important thing that we can do, not just this time, but in general in our lives. But this gives us the opportunity to do it better than we ever have before. And which begs the question, how do we do that? Do we get to know ourselves?
And I mean, that is the $1,000,000 question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And in a way, one thing is being in your day-to-day life and feeling like you choose to go and explore yourself in some pockets of time. So you may decide to meditate every morning, or to go and see a coach, or to explore yourself more. But when it's a choice, it feels empowering. I feel like in this moment, we're all having to come really close to ourselves within a context where it doesn't always feel like a choice. So a lot of people feel more like it is a burden of they are constantly in their own presence, and therefore going towards getting to know yourself better, or going into those nitty gritty, annoying, uncomfortable feelings is, I guess, not the thing you want to do the most. So yeah, how do we get there? I guess the first one would be acceptance of the situation, allowing the situation to be as it is, recognizing that this is where you are, and no matter how much you fight, no matter how much you numb, you will not be able to change it. So that's a massive one. And then the second one is bringing curiosity. So you've accepted that this is the situation, and now you're being curious to what is arising around you, but especially inside you. What is the situation triggering for you? So back to identity, what happens inside you when you feel like all the labels that you were defining yourself by all of a sudden fall apart? So that's going to be the third step. It's going to be to allow the emotions to be there. Allow the negativity to show up. Allow the darkest corners of yourself to actually overwhelm you, to be the most present thing in the room, and to not only look at them, analyze them, scrutinize them, but also make room for them.
I think
that was what I was going to ask. It's like there's getting to know yourself, which everyone now is being forced to. And then I feel like once you've done that, you hopefully want to get to the step of getting to love yourself. I know that sounds cliche. And I think that's like a two-step thing almost, and it is get to the step of a lot of people being forced to face this right now. So how do you think you get from getting to know yourself to accepting and hopefully loving yourself?
the step that is missing in the middle is awareness, the becoming aware of the stories that are playing out. So something like identity, which gives you this sense of solidity, is based on a narrative that says, I am this, that, I am A, B, C, D. There's all these labels that we put on ourselves, and that creates a story that we then believe and define ourselves by. So I think the first step are in the way, or the stories that you are inhabited by every single day.
So it's like accepting the good and the bad, basically.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. But at the same time, like, I feel like we always have this feeling as a generation that we want to change the world. And as a whole, like across time, we feel like the generations going forward should be better off than the generations past us. And we're kind of like in the situation right now where that really isn't the case. And we feel like the systems which exist in the world as it is aren't progressing in our favor, and that everything that we have in place, the structures that we have in place, are kind of falling apart. So there is, on one sense, the feeling of helplessness, but also wanting to contribute to that and make that better, but not knowing exactly how to do that. And that's also a very distressing feeling.
And that triggers the stress, because it makes you feel like we should be better off than the previous generations, yet we've got to a stage where everything seems to be collapsing and not able to hold where we are today. And I think what's interesting there is that we can apply the same lens that we apply to the individual level of becoming aware of the stories. So on an individual level, we have these stories that define us, these stories that say who we are, what we do, and everything around that. There's the same thing at a societal level. Our societies live by certain narratives, how we redefine systems that, as you said, will allow people to not be in distress or in the most
for that richness to come from within, as opposed to
But I think also our relationships are very important in this vein. We talked a lot about self-discovery and about dealing with hard situations that are truly unprecedented for employers and individuals alike. So I kind of want to turn back into the way that we relate to other people, and more specifically, how we tend to relate to people in the midst of a pandemic. And of course, we have unfiltered access to Zoom and FaceTime and different video sharing platforms, and that's great. And so we feel the attention of the people we love. We feel them around us. We feel their presence. But is this sort of intimacy? Is this virtual intimacy fictional, or can we truly reach a level of intimacy with the people we love and our closest relationships, even when there's a lack of physical proximity? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it points towards a very, very interesting dichotomy almost of what is proximity and what is intimacy. So we all understand proximity as being physically close to someone. Intimacy is a little bit more misunderstood. So often when we speak about intimacy, people think about close physical proximity, but especially in terms of a partnership. Its root word means inmost, so the deepest part of a being. And that deepest part can be reached when you are next to someone, if you actively engage with them. That's something that we're all experiencing at the moment, and especially people who are in lockdown with other family members or friends or partners, that they're now 24/7, yet connection is really hard. And often these people are going to feel more connected to the people they're interacting with through Zoom or through a FaceTime than the people who are actually next to them.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, like in China, how the divorce rates have increased now that the virus is slowing down there, and maybe this will happen globally. Do you think that people who are in relationships, or obviously marriages, where they think things are all good, and then in these certain circumstances where all the outside distractions are stripped away, your job, that's when you really get to know also if they're the right person for you, or is that they're not connecting properly under the circumstances and the stress of this pandemic is causing relationships to fall apart?
The fact that England has now included, one of the reasons why you can leave the house now is as a cooling off period if you have an argument with your partner.
There's been a rise of domestic violence as well as divorce rates going up. So just adding on to that. So what do you think?
Yeah, to answer your question, Jess, I think it's It's both. It's a bit of both. I think is that in a crisis, in general, meaning and sense shifts. So all the things that give us meaning in a normal time, that are part of our everyday life and everyday purpose, shifts and morphs because we are in this crisis situation where everything is intensified. So all of a sudden we ask these existential questions of, is this the person I want to spend the rest of my life with? Or is this the situation, the house I want to live in for the rest of my life? Have I been able to really satisfy my needs and my desires? And do I need to do something different if it is true that I might die soon? So I think there's this shift of sense of purpose and of focus. Quarantine with a single person or with a family may make a lot of things come up for you. And if you don't have the tools, this will come out in your responses to the people around you. You will be reactive. You won't be aware of what you're feeling. You might be blaming it on other people. And there's also a last thing that's going to happen is that because there's this shift of meaning, of sense, and because people don't always know themselves very well, there's going to be big changes in character. So someone might act very non-linearly. Someone who was the father of the family, providing for the family, spending very little time at home, all of a sudden is here 24/7 and acts like a child because he needs affection, because he needs attention, because his identity has collapsed and he needs someone to come and fill that hole. And then there is the wife who all of a sudden doesn't recognize her husband and is wondering whether she even knows him. So there's all these conflicts happening, and there's this messy web of emotions that often we don't have the tools to deal with, and also we're too proud to ask for external support to help us with it.
But do you think that is, and those existential questions are artificially created as a result of the environment that we're in, or they're rather us pushing us into deeper introspection because we have to spend time with those people and ourselves?
Yeah, I think they're questions that we always have within us. I think they're questions that we are scared to ask because we prefer often safety and familiarity over the big questions that are uncertain and unknown, and that may bring us completely out of what we know. So in normal times, we always have those questions there, but we find a wide array of ways to just push it down. Often people numb it. People who have a lot of existential questions are often the ones who invest in more behaviors with substance abuse. They find ways to push them down. Now, in a crisis situation, there's no way of pushing them down because they just explode in your face. And because all of the activities and all the behaviors that you engaged in to numb them, all of a sudden aren't there anymore. So the questions are just exploding without you being able to reply. Now, I think that the intensity at which they come out with is artificially created by the fact that we've pushed them down for so long. So it's less about a crisis and it's more about they're coming out for the first time in years and therefore seem really important, and it feels like it's our only chance. So we've got to jump at them. I think it's important for everyone to remember that those questions have always been there, and it's important that we're seeing them, but we don't need an answer right now. And the same way that uncertainty is making us feel really anxious and overwhelmed, in the same way, the uncertainty is also going to make it hard to find answers now. And this is the start, this should be seen as the start of a process rather than a gap in time, which gives us 2 months to completely overhaul our lives and change everything that we knew.
Okay, I think that's really interesting what you just said, that those are questions we should already be asking ourselves, and this is just putting us in a quicker path onto the journey of knowing ourselves. Which brings me to my next point. You've come up with a framework that allows us to do that and to get to know ourselves while also staying healthy and staying better in our own minds at the same time. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Productive, but also allows us to feed our soul, our mind, our heart, and allow time for ourselves as well as dealing with reality. And is that possible? I guess there's no perfect routine for everyone. But I'm just wondering, do you have any tips?
It's that new age and it's something special. Yeah, we gon' game.